Ambassador Kang Minho stepped off the transport ship and looked around Nexus Prime Station. The metal walls stretched high above him, covered in strange symbols from dozens of different worlds. Alien voices filled the air, speaking in languages that sounded like music, growls, or clicking sounds. The smell was different too. Not bad, just alien. Minho had been to Nexus Prime many times before. He was Earth's top diplomat, and this space station was where all the important galactic meetings happened. But something felt wrong today. The usual friendly greetings from other species were missing. Instead, he got cold stares and whispered, conversations that stopped when he walked by. Behind him, his team followed with their luggage and equipment. Park Ji-won was his military advisor. She was tough and smart, always ready to defend humanity when others attacked them with words. Lee Soman carried data tablets full of scientific reports. She loved to share human discoveries with alien scientists, though lately they seemed less interested. Choi Tae-hyun had trade agreements and economic data. He worked hard to make sure humans got fair deals in galactic commerce. The group walked through the station's main corridor toward their assigned rooms. Other delegates moved around them like water flowing around rocks. No one bumped into them or spoke to them. It was as if they were invisible, or maybe diseased. Minho noticed that the Velkari delegation walked past without their usual polite nods. The Velkari looked like tall, thin humans, but with gray skin and no hair. They had been allies with Earth for 20 years. Now their leader, Chancellor Thexvar, looked at Minho like he was something dirty on his shoe. The insect-like Zephyrians were worse. They used to trade knowledge with human scientists all the time. Now they clicked their mandibles in what Minho knew was their version of laughter whenever they saw humans. But it was not friendly laughter. When they reached their rooms, Ji-won closed the door and checked for listening devices. She found 3 that were not supposed to be there. Someone was spying on them. "This is not good," she said quietly. "I have been watching the other delegates. They are acting like we already did something terrible." Soman sat down at her computer and started reading messages from Earth. Her face grew worried as she scrolled through the reports. "The Science Council is getting strange responses to our research proposals. Projects we have been working on for months are suddenly being rejected or delayed." Tae-hyun was looking at trade data on his tablet. "Something is definitely happening. 3 major contracts were canceled this week. Our trading partners are giving no real reasons." Minho walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Humans had been part of the Galactic Council for 50 years. They had fought alongside other species against pirates and hostile aliens. They had shared their technology and culture. They had followed all the rules and laws. So why did it feel like they were about to be put on trial? The next morning, the team made their way to the Great Assembly Hall. The room was enormous, with seats arranged in circles going up toward the ceiling. Each species had their own section with special chairs or platforms designed for their bodies. The human section was smaller than most, since Earth only had a few dozen colony worlds compared to the hundreds or thousands that older species controlled. But when they got to their usual seats, Minho stopped. Their nameplates had been moved. Instead of sitting near the center with the other major powers, they had been placed in the far corner. That was where new species sat when they first joined the council. It was also where species sat when they were in trouble. "Are you sure we are in the right place?" Ji-won asked. Minho checked his diplomatic messages. "Yes, this is where they want us to sit." The opening ceremony began with the usual speeches about cooperation and peace, but Minho noticed that no one mentioned humanity's contributions to galactic society. Usually, there would be at least one reference to human medical advances or human peacekeeping forces. This time, nothing. When the first session started, it was supposed to be about trade disputes between different sectors. Tae-hyun had prepared a presentation about human agricultural techniques that could help feed overcrowded worlds. He had been scheduled to speak for 20 minutes. Instead, he got 5 minutes, and most of the other delegates talked through his entire presentation. When he showed data about crop yields increasing by 30%, a Velkari representative interrupted. "These primitive farming methods may work on simple worlds," the alien said in a bored voice. "But advanced civilizations require more sophisticated approaches." Tae-hyun's face turned red. The farming techniques he was showing had fed billions of people across dozens of worlds. They were not primitive at all. But before he could respond, the session moderator moved on to the next speaker. Salmon got similar treatment when she tried to present research on faster-than-light communications. Her data was solid and her conclusions were backed by 3 years of testing. But the Crystalline Collective's representative dismissed her work as interesting but impractical without even looking at the evidence. Humans always rush to implement new technologies without considering the consequences, the crystal being said, its voice sounding like wind chimes. Wisdom comes from patience, not speed. Jiwan gripped her chair arms so tight her knuckles turned white. These aliens were treating human achievements like they were toys made by children, but Minho gave her a small shake of his head. Getting angry would only make things worse. During the lunch break, Minho tried to approach some of the other ambassadors. Most found excuses to leave before he could reach them. The few who did talk to him were polite but cold. Their conversations felt forced, like they were doing him a favor by speaking to him at all. He finally cornered Ambassador Kelthera from the Aquatic Federation. Her species had worked closely with humans on underwater colony projects. She had always been friendly before. "Kelthera, what is happening here?" he asked directly. "Why is everyone treating us like enemies?" The fish-like alien's gills fluttered nervously. She looked around to make sure no one was listening. "Minho, there have been discussions. Some species think humans are becoming too powerful too quickly. They worry about where this will lead." "Too powerful? We have been following all the council laws and regulations." "Yes, but you grow so fast. In 50 years, you have gone from one world to dozens. Your technology advances every few months instead of every few decades. Some people think this is dangerous." Before Minho could ask more questions, Chancellor Thexvar approached. Kelthera quickly excused herself and swam away to join a group of her own people. "Ambassador Minho," Thexvar said with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "I hope you are enjoying the assembly so far." "It has been educational," Minho replied carefully. "Yes, I imagine it has. Change can be difficult to accept, especially when it involves adjusting one's place in the galactic community." The threat was clear, even though it was wrapped in diplomatic language. Humans were expected to accept a lower position in the council hierarchy. That evening, Minho sent an encrypted message to Earth. He told them about the moved seating, the interrupted presentations, and the cold reception from former allies. Most importantly, he told them about his conversation with Kelthera. The response came back within hours. Earth's government had been receiving similar signals from their ambassadors on other worlds. Human businesses were losing contracts. Human scientists were being excluded from research projects. Human military vessels were being asked to leave areas where they had been welcome before. It was becoming clear that this was not just about the Council Assembly. This was a coordinated effort to put humanity back in its place. The question was, what were they going to do about it? As Minho looked out at the stars from his window that night, he wondered if the next few days would change everything for the human race. The second day started badly and got worse. Minho and his team arrived at the assembly hall to find their seats had been moved again. Now they were in the very back row, behind species that had joined the council only a few years ago. It was a clear insult, but Minho decided not to make a scene about it. Chancellor Thexvar stood up to address the assembly. His gray skin looked almost silver under the bright lights, and his voice carried clearly through the huge room. What he said next changed everything. "Fellow council members," he began, "today we must address a serious threat to galactic peace and stability. The human species has repeatedly violated our most sacred laws and agreements." A holographic display appeared above the speaker's platform. It showed a star map with human colony worlds marked in red. Several red dots were blinking, indicating what Thexvar claimed were illegal settlements. "Here we see human colonies that have expanded beyond their approved boundaries," the Chancellor continued. "They have taken resources that belong to other species. They have built military bases in neutral space." Minho felt his blood pressure rising. Those red dots were colonies that had been approved by the Council itself. The paperwork was all filed correctly, but when he tried to stand up and object, the session moderator ignored him. The hologram changed to show human trading ships. Thexvar pointed at them with a long, thin finger. Human traders have been selling dangerous weapons and technology to primitive species. They care more about profit than about the safety of developing civilizations. Soman grabbed Minho's arm. Those are medical supplies and farming equipment, she whispered. We have the shipping records to prove it. But no one was asking for proof. The other delegates watched the presentation with nodding heads and clicking sounds that meant agreement in their various languages. The worst accusation came last. The hologram showed human military ships conducting training exercises. The weapons they were using looked impressive and deadly in the recording. Most serious of all, Thexvar said, his voice getting louder. Humans have developed weapons that violate our treaties on military technology. These devices could destroy entire fleets or even planets. Now Jiwon could not stay quiet. She stood up despite the moderator's glare. Those weapons were approved by this council 3 years ago, she called out. We submitted every design for review and got official approval. But her words were drowned out by angry hissing and clicking from the other delegates. Several species made sounds that clearly meant they thought she was lying. The Crystalline Collective's representative, Speaker Zenth, rose from his platform. His body looked like a walking diamond, reflecting light in rainbow patterns. When he spoke, his voice sounded like musical notes. The human military representative speaks of approvals, he said. But where is the wisdom in creating such terrible weapons at all? A truly advanced species seeks peace, not more efficient ways to destroy life. We created defensive systems to protect our colonies from pirates, Jiwon replied. The same pirates that attack your shipping lanes, too. Speaker Zenth made a sound like breaking glass, which was how his species showed disapproval. Humans always have excuses for their violence. They cannot help themselves. It is in their nature to fight and destroy. Minho finally got the moderator's attention and was allowed to speak. He walked down to the main platform with a data tablet containing all their legal documents and approvals. Honorable council members, he began, keeping his voice calm and professional. These accusations are based on misunderstandings and incomplete information. Every human action mentioned today was approved by proper council authorities. He activated his own holographic display. It showed the original approval documents for the disputed colonies, signed by council officials from 12 different species. It showed shipping manifests proving that human traders were selling peaceful goods, not weapons. It showed the military technology approval forms with official council stamps. But as Minho presented his evidence, he noticed something disturbing. Many delegates were not even looking at his data. They were having quiet conversations with each other or staring at their own devices. A few were making the body language signs for boredom or dismissal. When he finished his presentation, Chancellor Thexvar stood up again. The human ambassador shows us many documents, he said with a thin smile. But documents can be forged. Words can be twisted. What we see with our own eyes is more important than what appears on paper. The accusation of forgery hit the human delegation like a physical blow. In 50 years of council membership, no human diplomat had ever been accused of lying or falsifying documents. Their reputation for honesty was one of their greatest assets in galactic politics. Salman requested permission to speak about the scientific evidence. When she got to the platform, she pulled up detailed sensor readings and energy signatures that proved the human weapons were exactly what they claimed to be. She showed asteroid belt mining data that proved human colonies were only taking resources from areas assigned to them. But her scientific explanations were met with what could only be described as eye-rolling from species that had eyes. Others made dismissive gestures with whatever appendages they used for communication. A representative from the insectoid Zephyrian hive stood up on 6 legs and clicked his mandibles rapidly. Through the translation system, his words came out as, human scientists are clever with numbers and data. They can make any lie look like truth with enough mathematics. We prefer to trust our instincts about human nature. Taehyun tried to explain the economic evidence, but he got the same treatment. Even when he showed trade agreements signed by the accusers themselves, they dismissed his explanations as human word-twisting and deliberate confusion. During a brief recess, Minho gathered his team in a small conference room. They were all angry and frustrated, but also confused. This was not how the council was supposed to work. Evidence and law were supposed to matter more than opinions and feelings. They are not listening to facts, Jiwon said. pacing around the small room like a caged animal. "It does not matter what proof we show them. They have already decided we are guilty." Soman was studying the voting records on her tablet. "I have been looking at the patterns. 12 major species have been voting together on every human-related issue for the past 6 months. This is coordinated." "But why?" Taehyun asked. "What do they gain by attacking us?" Before anyone could answer, there was a knock on the door. A young human woman entered. She was Dr. Yoon Ha-jin, a xenobiologist who had been working on Nexus Prime for 2 years. She was not part of the official delegation, but her research had made her many friends among alien scientists. "Ambassador Minho," she said quietly, "I think I know what is really happening here." She activated a portable holographic projector and showed them data that made everything clear. It was a comparative analysis of every species in the Council, showing their technological and social development over time. "Every species in this room went through the same phases humans are experiencing now," she explained. "Internal conflicts, rapid technological growth, social upheaval, and then stabilization. But look at the time scales." The hologram showed development curves for dozens of species. Most took thousands of years to go from primitive to advanced. Civilizations. A few took tens of thousands of years. Humans have compressed 10,000 years of development into 500 years, Ha-jin continued. "We are advancing faster than any species in galactic history. That terrifies them." Minho stared at the data. "So this is not about our violations of their laws. This is about fear." "Exactly. They are afraid that if humans continue to develop, at this rate we will surpass them all within a few generations, so they want to slow us down or stop us entirely." When the session resumed, Chancellor Thexvar announced the formation of something called the Galactic Stability Committee. Its purpose, he explained, was to provide guidance and oversight for species that showed signs of destabilizing rapid development. "Humans will be the first species to benefit from this committee's wisdom," he said. "Their expansion will be limited to Council-approved areas. Their technology development will be reviewed and regulated. Their military forces will be reduced to levels appropriate for their maturity." The vote was scheduled for the next day, but as Minho looked around the assembly hall, he could see that the outcome was already decided. The same 12 species that had been coordinating their attacks were nodding in agreement. Their allies were following their lead. Humanity was about to become a client species, dependent on Council approval for every major decision. Their independence was about to end, not through conquest, but through bureaucracy. That night, Minho sent another encrypted message to Earth. This time, he included Dr. Ha-jin's research and his own recommendations. The response came back faster than before, and it was not what he expected. Earth's government had been preparing for this possibility. They had contingency plans, and they were giving Minho authority to use them if necessary. As he read the orders, Minho realized that tomorrow would either be the day humanity accepted permanent second-class status in the galaxy, or the day they chose a completely different path. The choice was about to be taken out of the Council's hands. The third day began with what could only be called a show trial. The Great Assembly Hall was packed with delegates from hundreds of species, all eager to watch humanity's final humiliation. News crews from across the galaxy had cameras focused on the human delegation's corner seats. Chancellor Thexvar took the central platform with the confidence of someone who knew he had already won. Behind him, a massive holographic display showed the title of his presentation, The Human Problem, A Cultural Analysis. Minho felt sick to his stomach as the presentation began. The Chancellor had collected video footage from across human history, but he had chosen only the worst moments. Ancient wars, environmental disasters, social conflicts, all presented without context to make humans look like violent savages. "Observe the primitive brutality," Thexvar said, as images of old Earth battlefields filled the air above the assembly. "Note the wasteful destruction of resources, the complete inability to achieve lasting peace among their own kind." The footage was real, but it was also thousands of years old. It was like judging the Velkari by their ancient clan wars, or the Zephyrians by their old hive conflicts. Every species had dark periods in their past, but those periods were being ignored for everyone except humans. Jiwon clenched her fists as video of human soldiers appeared on screen. "Those are peacekeepers," she whispered to Minho. They are showing our people helping refugees, but they have removed the audio so no one knows what is really happening. The presentation continued with carefully edited footage of human colonies. Industrial sites were shown without their pollution controls. Mining operations were shown without their environmental restoration projects. Trading posts were shown without the schools and hospitals humans had built alongside them. Everywhere humans go, they bring chaos and destruction, the Chancellor continued. They take what they want and leave waste behind. They have no respect for the natural order of things. Many delegates were nodding along with the presentation. Some were making their species equivalent of agreeing sounds. A few were recording the footage to show their home governments. But then something unexpected happened. Dr. Yoon Ha-jin stood up in the observers section and requested permission to address the assembly. As a respected researcher who had been working on Nexus Prime for 2 years, she had the right to speak on scientific matters. The moderator looked confused but allowed her to approach the platform. Ha-jin was young and small, compared to most of the aliens in the room, but she walked to the center with confidence. "Honorable delegates," she began, "I have been studying galactic civilization patterns for my doctoral research. With your permission, I would like to share some relevant findings." She activated her own holographic display. Instead of showing human footage, she showed historical data spanning thousands of years across dozens of species. Charts and graphs filled the air above the assembly. Every single council member species went through periods of internal conflict, technological growing pains, and social upheaval, she explained. The Velkari fought clan wars for 3,000 years before achieving unity. The Zephyrians had 7 different hive conflicts that nearly destroyed their civilization. The Crystalline Collective went through a period they call the Shattering that lasted 2 millennia. Her presentation showed development curves for each major species. All of them had periods that looked exactly like humanity's current phase: rapid change, social stress, and growing pains. The difference, Ha-jin stated calmly, is that humans have compressed 10,000 years of social evolution into 500 years. We have learned faster, adapted quicker, and grown more rapidly than any species in council records. The assembly hall grew quiet. This was not what anyone had expected to hear. Several delegates leaned forward to study her data more carefully. Ha-jin continued with scientific precision. If you apply standard sociological development models to human progress, we are actually ahead of schedule for peaceful advancement. Our current conflict levels are lower than the galactic average for our development stage. She showed comparison charts that made the truth obvious. Humans were not more violent than other species. They were less violent than most species had been at similar points in their development. They were not more destructive. They had actually developed environmental protection technologies faster than any other known civilization. Based on current trends, Ha-jin concluded, humanity will achieve full social stability within the next century. This is remarkable by any standard. For a moment, the assembly was silent. Ha-jin's research was solid, her methods were sound, and her conclusions were based on objective data. Several species that had been critical of humans looked uncomfortable as they realized their own histories were being compared. Then Chancellor Thexvar began to laugh. It was a cold, mocking sound that echoed through the chamber. Within seconds, other delegates joined in. The Velkari delegation clapped their hands in sarcastic applause. The Zephyrians clicked their mandibles in rhythm. The Aquatic Federation made bubbling sounds that meant amusement. "How touching," the Chancellor said, when the laughter died down. "The humans send a child to defend them with numbers and charts. Tell me, young researcher, do your statistics account for human unpredictability? Do your models predict when they will decide that peace is boring and return to their natural state of warfare?" More laughter filled the chamber. Ha-jin's face turned red, but she stood her ground. "Science is not based on predictions of emotional states," she replied. "It is based on observable patterns and measurable data." "Exactly the problem," Speaker Zenth chimed in, his crystal body ringing like bells. "Humans reduce everything to numbers and measurements. They have no understanding of wisdom, patience, or spiritual growth. They are technically advanced, but emotionally primitive." A delegate from the fungal networks added their opinion. "Young species always think they know better than their elders. Humans refuse to accept guidance from civilizations that have existed for millions of years." The mockery continued for almost an hour. Every piece of evidence Hajin presented was dismissed with laughter or condescending comments. When she showed data proving that human colonies had lower crime rates than most galactic settlements, they said the numbers were probably fake. When she demonstrated that human technology was more efficient and less polluting than older methods, they claimed efficiency was not the same as wisdom. In the observer's gallery, Yu Dongmin quietly recorded everything with his personal device. He was a human engineer who had been attending the assembly as part of an educational exchange program. His live stream to Earth was capturing not just the mockery, but the fear behind it. Dongmin could see what the council delegates were really afraid of. Hajin's research proved that humans were not dangerous because they were primitive. They were dangerous because they were advanced. They were developing too fast, learning too quickly, and achieving too much. The other species had grown comfortable, with slow, predictable progress. They had established a galactic order based on age and tradition. Older species were automatically considered wiser and more deserving of respect. Newer species were expected to learn their place and stay there. Humans threatened that entire system simply by existing and growing. The mockery reached its peak when a Velkari representative stood up and actually imitated human speech patterns, making his voice higher and faster to sound like Hajin. "We are special because we grew up quickly," he said in the mocking tone. "We deserve respect because we learned fast. Please ignore our history of violence and destruction." The assembly erupted in laughter again. Even species that had been neutral were joining in now. It had become socially acceptable, even expected, to mock human achievements and dismiss human concerns. Hajin finally gave up trying to present her research. She gathered her materials and walked back to her seat with as much dignity as she could manage. But Minho could see tears in her eyes. Chancellor Thexavar returned to the platform for his closing remarks. "I think we have heard enough scientific theories for one day," he said with a smile. "The facts speak for themselves. Humans are a young, unstable species that needs guidance from their elders." He announced the formation of the Galactic Stability Committee with great ceremony. The committee would have the power to review and approve all human expansion plans, technology developments, and military activities. Human colonies would be limited to council-approved resources and trading partners. Human research would be channeled through council oversight committees. "This is not a punishment," the Chancellor explained. "This is an opportunity for humans to learn from species with millions of years of experience. Under proper guidance, they may eventually develop the wisdom to govern themselves responsibly." The vote was scheduled for later that afternoon. But as Minho looked around the chamber, he knew it was just a formality. The decision had been made before the assembly even started. During the lunch break, Minho tried one more time to speak with potential allies. But the mockery session had done its work. Even species that had been friendly before were now keeping their distance. Being associated with humans had become politically dangerous. Ambassador Kelthara from the Aquatic Federation would not even make eye contact with him. The afternoon session was supposed to be the final vote on humanity's fate. But Minho requested a recess before the voting began. He needed to consult with his team and with Earth before making any decisions. The human delegation gathered in their assigned quarters for what might be their last official meeting as council representatives. The small conference room felt cramped with all 5 team members present, but Minho wanted privacy for this conversation. He activated the quantum communication device that connected them directly to Earth. Within moments, Dr. Kim Byung-ho appeared as a hologram in the center of the room. As Earth's director of Xenopolitics, Byung-ho had been watching the assembly proceedings through live feeds. "The situation is worse than we expected," Byung-ho said without preamble. His face looked tired, and Minho could see other officials moving around in the background of his Geneva office. "They are not just rejecting our membership status. They want to make us a dependent client species." Jiwon leaned forward in her chair. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means accepting their oversight would freeze human development at current levels," Byung-ho explained. "We would need council approval for every new colony, every major research project, every military deployment. Essentially, we would become children under galactic guardianship." Soman pulled up economic data on her tablet. "I have been analyzing the proposed restrictions. If we accept their terms, human innovation gets bottlenecked through council review, committees. Projects that currently take months would take years or decades. The implications were staggering. Human medical research that could save millions of lives would be delayed, while alien bureaucrats debated whether it was appropriate for a young species to develop such advanced treatments. Human engineering projects that could make life better on dozens of worlds would be canceled because they were too advanced for humanity's supposed maturity level. Taehyun brought even worse news from the economic analysis. They have already drafted trade restrictions. Human colonies would only be allowed to purchase council-approved technologies and resources. We would be frozen at our current development level indefinitely. How long indefinitely? Minho asked. Based on their own development timescales, probably 10,000 years. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed that number. 10,000 years of technological stagnation. 10,000 years of being treated as galactic children. 10,000 years of watching other species make decisions about humanity's future. Lee Youngji, their cultural attaché, had been quietly taking notes throughout the discussion. Now she spoke up with an observation that changed everything. "This is not really about us anymore," she said. "Every other species is watching to see what happens when someone grows too fast or becomes too successful. We are the test case." Byung-ho nodded grimly from his holographic projection. "Our intelligence services have been monitoring communications across council space. Several developing species are watching this assembly very carefully. If we accept these restrictions, it sets a precedent for how the council deals with any species that threatens the established order." Minho understood immediately. If humanity accepted client status, every other ambitious species would know their ultimate fate. The galactic community would become permanently stratified, with old species on top and new species kept in subordinate positions forever. "What about fighting the decision?" Ji-won asked. "We could appeal to the council courts, challenge their legal authority, maybe build a coalition of younger species." Byung-ho shook his head. "We have been exploring those options for weeks. The council courts are controlled by the same species pushing these restrictions, and the younger species are too afraid to oppose the established powers. They hope that, if they stay quiet and obedient, they will not be targeted next." Salmon looked up from her data analysis. "There is another problem. Even if we could challenge this legally, the process would take years. During that time, they could implement economic sanctions that would cripple our colonies. So our choices are accept client status or face economic warfare," Taehyun summarized. "Actually," Minho said quietly, "we have a third option." Everyone turned to look at him. He had been thinking about this possibility since the morning's mockery session, but he had hoped it would not come to this. "We could withdraw from the council entirely." The suggestion hung in the air like a dangerous idea that no one wanted to touch. Withdrawing from the Galactic Council was almost unthinkable. No species had ever done it voluntarily. The Council provided trade networks, defense agreements, scientific cooperation, and diplomatic protection. Leaving would mean giving up 50 years of galactic citizenship, but it would also mean freedom. Byung-ho's hologram flickered as he consulted with other officials off-screen. When he turned back to the conversation, his expression was serious, but determined. "Earth's leadership has been discussing this possibility," he admitted. "We have contingency plans in place. The vote was close, but the Colonial Council has approved emergency authorization for complete withdrawal if you determine it is necessary." Ji-won sat up straighter. "What kind of contingency plans?" "We have been quietly building relationships with non-council species and developing independent trade networks. Our colonies are more self-sufficient than most people realize. We could survive outside the council system, at least for a while." Minho looked around the room at his team. These were Earth's best diplomats, scientists, and economic experts. If anyone could make an objective assessment of their options, it was these people. "Honest opinions," he said. "Can we accept client status and work to change the system from within?" So-min answered first. "No. The restrictions they are proposing would slow our development to their comfort level. By the time we earned enough respect to change anything, we would have lost decades of progress." Taehyun agreed. "The economic controls would make us dependent on council-approved suppliers. We would lose our competitive advantages and become just another average species." Ji-won was more blunt. "They are not offering us partnership. They are offering us slavery with better working conditions." Youngji nodded. and accepting those terms would signal to every other developing species that rapid advancement leads to punishment. It would change the entire galactic political structure. Minho made the decision that would alter the course of human history. Then we withdraw, not from accusations we cannot answer, but from a system that has already decided our fate. The team spent the next 2 hours working out the details. They would pack their materials and depart before the vote could take place. No dramatic speeches, no angry protests, no desperate final appeals. They would simply leave, quietly and with dignity. Kim Dae-ho, their communications specialist, prepared a simple message to be sent to all human colonies, stations, and ships. Effective immediately, all human diplomatic and trade relations with Council species are suspended pending review. No explanations, no threats, no emotional appeals. Just a statement of fact. Byung-ho coordinated with Earth's government to implement the withdrawal procedures. Human embassies would close, trade agreements would be terminated, research collaborations would end, military cooperation would cease. It was the diplomatic equivalent of walking away from a poker game when you realize the other players have been cheating. As the team packed their belongings, Minho felt a strange sense of relief. For 3 days, they had been trying to defend humanity against accusations that were based on fear rather than fact. They had been fighting for acceptance from species that had already decided to reject them. Now they were free to build something new. The hardest part was deciding what to tell the council. Some team members wanted to make a speech explaining their decision. Others wanted to present evidence of the coordinated campaign against humanity. A few suggested making demands or ultimatums. But Minho chose silence. They would leave without explanations or justifications. Their absence would speak louder than any words. As evening approached, the human delegation made final preparations for departure. Their ship was already being loaded with their equipment and personal belongings. The crew had been briefed on their new orders. In a few hours, they would no longer be representatives to the Galactic Council. They would be ambassadors to a new kind of future, one that humanity would build for itself. The Council wanted to control human development to make it predictable and comfortable for everyone else. But humans had never been particularly good at being predictable or comfortable. It was time to show the galaxy what humanity could accomplish when it stopped asking for permission. The assembly hall buzzed with excitement as delegates returned from the evening recess. Everyone expected to see a defeated human delegation, ready to accept whatever terms the Council offered. The vote was scheduled to begin in 30 minutes. And most species had already decided how they would cast their ballots. Chancellor Thexavar took his place at the central platform with obvious satisfaction. He had spent months organizing this moment, building the coalition that would finally put humanity in its proper place. Around the great chamber, delegates settled into their seats and prepared to witness the end of human independence. But something was wrong. The human section was empty. At first, many delegates assumed the humans were simply running late. Perhaps they were having last-minute discussions about which terms they might be willing to accept. But as minutes passed and the seats remained vacant, whispers began to spread through the chamber. Speaker Zenth's crystalline body rang like a bell as he turned to examine the empty seats. "Where are the humans?" he asked, no one in particular. Chancellor Thexvar looked genuinely confused. This was not part of his carefully planned script. He activated his personal communicator to check with station security. "Are the humans still on Nexus Prime?" The answer came back within minutes, and it hit the assembly like a physical shock. The human transport ship Soul's Pride had departed 23 minutes ago. No forwarding destination had been filed with station control. A low murmur ran through the chamber as delegates realized what had happened. The humans had not stayed to hear the verdict. They had not waited to learn their fate. They had simply left. "Perhaps they are returning from another recess," suggested Ambassador Kelthera from the Aquatic Federation, though her voice sounded uncertain. The station's departure logs were checked again. The human delegation had departed with all their equipment and personal belongings. Their diplomatic credentials had been returned to station administration. Their quarters had been cleared out completely. It took another hour for the full implications to sink in. The humans had not just left the assembly. They had left the council entirely. 50 years of galactic citizenship had been abandoned as if it meant nothing at all. Then the reports started coming in from across council space. Human embassies were closing their doors and sending their staff home. Human trade stations were terminating their contracts with alien corporations. Human research facilities were ending their collaboration projects and packing up their equipment. The Velkari Commercial Guild received notice that their largest shipping contract, worth billions of credits annually, was being canceled immediately. The Zephyrian Science Collective learned that their joint research project on quantum mechanics was being shut down. The Aquatic Federation discovered that their underwater colony project would continue without human technical support. Dr. Yoon. Hajin appeared in the assembly hall one final time, but now she was not speaking as a desperate defender of her species. She was completing her research as a scientist who had just observed the most significant political event in galactic history. "Honorable delegates," she said calmly, "I would like to present my final paper on galactic governance patterns." Her holographic display showed the title, "Sociological Patterns in Interstellar Governance, a Case Study in Democratic Failure." The assembly fell silent as she began her presentation. This was not the young woman who had been mocked that morning. This was a scientist documenting a historic moment with clinical precision. When a democratic institution becomes more concerned with maintaining comfortable stability than encouraging healthy growth, she explained, it ceases to function as a democracy and becomes an oligarchy. Her data showed voting patterns within the council over the past 50 years. The same small group of old species had been making decisions for everyone else, using their influence to block changes that threatened their dominant position. The council has chosen predictability over progress, comfort over innovation, and fear over opportunity, Hajin continued. This is a classic pattern that leads to institutional collapse. She presented her research data to the Assembly's computer systems, making it freely available to all species. Then she gathered her materials and walked toward the exit. "Where are you going?" Chancellor Thexvar called after her. "To join a civilization that values scientific advancement over political comfort," she replied, without turning around. Within days, the economic impact became impossible to ignore. Human colonies had been significant consumers of alien goods, purchasing everything from exotic materials to luxury items. Human transportation networks had been the most efficient in the galaxy, moving cargo and passengers between worlds faster and cheaper than anyone else. Most importantly, human innovation had become integral to dozens of supply chains. Medical devices, communication systems, environmental technologies, and manufacturing processes all relied on human improvements and modifications. The Crystalline Collective discovered that their mining operations were 20% less efficient without human-designed extraction equipment. The fungal networks learned that their agricultural yields dropped significantly without human soil enhancement techniques. The Velkari found that their manufacturing costs increased substantially without access to human automation systems. But the real shock came when developing species started requesting human assistance directly, bypassing the Council entirely. The Keth Republic, a young civilization that had been under Velkari guidance for decades, formally requested human aid in developing their industrial infrastructure. They were tired of being told they were not ready for advanced technology. The Mossfolk Collective, a plant-based species struggling with agricultural challenges, asked for human farming techniques that the Council had declared too advanced for their development level. Within weeks, a dozen species had made similar requests. They were not asking to join the Council's client system. They were asking to work with humanity directly. Chancellor Thexvar tried desperately to contact Ambassador Minho, but received only automated responses. The Human Colonial Alliance is currently reviewing its interstellar diplomatic policies. We appreciate your patience during this transition period. The Council called emergency sessions to discuss the crisis. Some delegates wanted to impose sanctions on species that worked with humans. Others suggested offering better terms to bring humanity back. A few even proposed military action, though that idea was quickly abandoned when intelligence reports revealed the true extent of human military capabilities. 6 months later, the full scope of the Council's miscalculation became clear. Humanity had not needed the Council as much as the Council had needed humanity. The galaxy's most innovative species had been providing technological solutions, economic efficiency, and diplomatic services that kept the entire system functioning. Without human participation, the Council's decision-making process slowed to a crawl. Economic growth stagnated across Council space. Scientific advancement nearly stopped as research projects lost their most creative participants. Meanwhile, reports from the frontier regions told a different story. Humanity was building something unprecedented in galactic history, a voluntary alliance based on merit rather than age, on potential rather than tradition. The new alliance welcomed any species that valued progress over comfort. Membership was earned through contribution, not inherited through ancient privileges. Young civilizations were given the same voice as old ones, as long as they could demonstrate their commitment to mutual advancement. Ambassador Minho stood on the observation deck of New Sejong Station, humanity's new diplomatic center in the Outer Rim territories. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see ships from dozens of species docking at the station's ports. But these were not the established council races. These were young civilizations, developing species, and even former council, members who had grown tired of bureaucratic stagnation. The station itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering. Human construction techniques had been combined with Keth metallurgy, mossfolk biological systems, and innovations from a dozen other species. It was larger and more advanced than anything the Council had ever built, and it had been completed in less than 2 years. Dr. Hajin approached him with her latest research report. "The economic data is final," she said with a smile. "Our alliance members are experiencing an average of 37% growth in technological development and 42% improvement in living standards." "And the Council?" Minho asked. "Stagnation across all major indicators. Some of their member species are experiencing economic decline for the first time in centuries." Through the window, Minho could see a massive construction project in the distance. It was a new type of starship, designed using principles that no single species could have developed alone. The vessel would be capable of crossing the galaxy in weeks rather than months, opening up regions of space that had been unreachable before. The Council had mocked humanity's rapid development and demanded that it slow down to match their comfort levels. Instead, humanity had found partners who wanted to speed up. "Sir," interrupted Kim Daeho, the former communications specialist who now served as the Alliance's information coordinator, "we are receiving another formal request to join the Alliance."